since everyone's making sourdough, might as well too. So this is going to be a quite simple sourdough. So 800 grams of flour. Here I'm using 600 grams of bread flour with 200 grams of rye flour. So as long as it equals 800 grams, you're in good shape. Add 20 grams of salt, 320 grams of sourdough starter, and 460 grams of water. Give that a mix and attach it to your KitchenAid, or you can do this by hand. It is a wet dough, so don't be scared if you're doing this by hand, if it's very sticky. As you build gluten, it will eventually come together. So don't start adding flour like crazy, because it's just gonna absorb it all and you're gonna throw off your ratio and you're gonna get a very heavy and dense dough. So here you can see the dough's come together, it's hydrated, and the gluten's been built up, as you can see here by the window pane test. So this is just picking the dough up and stretching it, and it stays together. You can kind of see right through it as if it were a window. So from here, you're gonna remove it and allow it to proof for the first time. So in a lightly oiled bowl, you're gonna place the sourdough, and this is gonna sit there for about 3 hours at room temperature. I keep mine near the oven and the stovetop where it's relatively warm, about 70 degrees, and this is gonna help with fermentation. Because you're using a natural sourdough starter, the fermentation is just a little slower, so don't be discouraged if it doesn't grow as fast as it would be with instant yeast. So just place it in the bowl and cover it lightly. You can use a damp cloth or some saran wrap. All right, so it's been 3 hours for the first fermentation. You can see that it's almost doubled in size. And onto a floured work surface, it's gonna go, and this is gonna be the shaping of the dough and the last fermentation. So with cloth over the bowl that you're gonna ferment into, you're gonna heavily flour this cloth because it will stick, and you do not want to. It's an absolute disaster when you pull it out the next morning and the whole piece of bread has been stuck to your towel, and you're kind of screwed from that point on. So turn over the dough onto the floured work surface, and this is where we're going to begin to shape the dough. This is very important because this kind of will dictate the size and the shape of the bread after baking. So go ahead and punch out all that air, and we're going to pull from one side and move around in a circle, pressing that into the center. You're gonna go all the way around. You'll find where there's least resistance, and you just kind of keep pulling from there. Once you kind of reach where it won't pull any longer, we're gonna flip it over and kind of pull towards you and turn 90 degrees and keep repeating that in a circle, and you're gonna feel the top of the dough tighten. And you want this, you don't wanna go so tight that you tear the dough either. So be careful, feel the dough. You wanna clip at the bottom, kind of lock it in place. And then from here, it's gonna go into your bowl or basket. Flour the top because it is quite sticky and you don't want it to stick, because we're gonna cover it with the remainder of the towel. And from here, it's gonna go into the fridge for overnight fermentation, 12 to 14 hours. So this is the next morning. You can see it's grown slightly, and you're gonna tell it's fermented. At this point, I've had the oven preheating for 1 hour at 500 degrees with my Dutch oven, if you would. So a heavy bottom pot with a lid. It's been heating up in the oven, and this is where you're gonna bake your bread because it needs steam. So parchment paper over the bowl, and we're just gonna flip it over. And gently remove the towel, because if it is sticking, you want to be able to pull it off carefully, not tear your dough. And here we're gonna cut along the edge, and you can kind of go crazy here. You can design any shape you want, but this is just gonna allow the dough to expand during its spring in the oven, and so that it doesn't explode. So it's got all that energy is gonna go out into that direction that you've cut. And from here, go ahead and throw it into your preheated cast iron or Dutch oven and put the lid on. So you need to have the lid on. This is going to build steam in there and allow for oven spring. And here's the bread after 25 minutes in a 500-degree oven. You can see the oven spring. And then from here, with the lid off, it's going to go in for an additional 20 minutes at 475 degrees. This is where you're going to build the crust of the bread. So it's very important, and it can go very fast at times. So keep an eye on your bread. Check it after about 15 minutes, and then at 20 minutes, it should be done, but it may need to be in there a little bit longer. So do watch it. And then, as good as it smells and looks, allow it to rest for an hour and a half to 2 hours, because it's extremely hot, and if you don't, you can ruin the crumb of the bread. So after 2 hours, we're going to cut it, and the mandatory cross section that you have to do when making sourdough, I'm going to cut it right down the middle. Now this dough is about 70% hydration, so it's a little low compared to many other sourdoughs. I prefer it because of the crumb that you get, as you'll see here. It's nice and dense, some air pockets, but you can still spread all your toppings for jams and mayos. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and comment below.